Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining us for today's introduction to Aston Online's DBA, the Doctorate of Business Administration. I'm Peter Ludgate. I'm the Senior Student Recruitment Advisor. Joining us today as well is Dr. Geoff Parks, the Programme Director, and also kindly joining us today is also Paul Jones, a previous DBA student with Aston. So hello
Hi,
there,
Pete.
guys. Thanks for
Hi,
joining.
hi. Yep, good to see you again.
Fantastic. Lovely. Thank you, guys. So we'll be hearing more from those guys in a little while. Kind of the agenda for today I'll be talking you all through applying through Aston Online for the DBA, kind of some tips on submitting a good application and so forth. Before then, Geoff will take over and talk through what makes up a good research proposal, and then we'll finally round things off with a bit of a kind of a Q&A discussion between Geoff and Paul. Okay, so no need to take any notes. The recording of this webinar will be sent to you after today's session. You can if you want. If you do have any questions throughout, please use the chat box provided. Okay, and we'll do our best to field as many of them as we can. We may wait until the end. We may answer them as we go along, depending on when is most appropriate. Okay, so the DBA, first of all, the next class begins in 4 days' time, so we are a little bit late now. If anyone's looking to apply then, we're actually now looking towards our September start. Okay, the DBA is delivered by the triple accredited Aston Business School. Okay, we combine advanced theory with business research to develop data-driven research projects. And we really value kind of learning kind of theory, applying it to real world situations. Okay. About Aston University, we pride ourselves again on providing flexible, student-focused global learning experiences. You'll find that large parts of the DBA is asynchronous, so you can study and research and so forth in your own time. We were ranked 66th globally and top 10 in the UK for business and management, according to QS 2024. We've also been in various top 10s, top 20s, and so forth in university guides, The Guardian, the Daily Mail, and so forth. So we have a lot going for us, needless to say. And you might be wondering, well, why Aston Online? There are lots of different providers out there. Besides all of the accolades, which we're very proud of, we also like to say that we provide a really good student experience throughout. So you will have the support of experienced tutors who will provide one-to-one feedback, and supervisors and so forth. You'll have a dedicated pastoral team known as the Student Success Team. You will have full access to our digital library, any resources and materials you need. They'll all be there 24/7. We'll also give you full access to Adobe Creative Cloud whenever needed. We also, as I briefly mentioned, we allow you to take control of your own schedule. Okay, the program is online, asynchronous. You can study around your schedule. If you are working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, heaven forbid, you can fit your studies in around that. Okay. You can also access these materials anytime, anywhere. So if you do travel internationally for your work, as long as you take your laptop with you and you find a good internet connection, or I'd say a reliable internet connection, then it will all fall into place. Total fee for the DBA is worth £39,000. Okay, it's payable in monthly installments. Okay, the duration of the program between 4 and 6 years. Now, I would say that most, if not all, students want to complete it in 4 years, although we do allow up to an additional 2 if your research project calls for it. Okay. The entry requirements for the DBA. Okay, we look for a UK master's degree or an international equivalent in business or management or a related subject. Could be engineering or something. And if you're unsure, book in a call with us. We can talk through your options. We also look for a minimum of 5 years of senior management experience, and any international students need to meet English language requirements. So something like an IELTS or a TOEFL or something similar. So if you have all of these things, but you don't yet have an IELTS or a TOEFL, speak to myself or a member of the team. We'll be able to talk through your options. There may be something we can do for you, which would mean you don't have to wait 3 or 4 months to sit an exam. Okay. And before I hand over to Geoff on crafting a good proposal, I'm just going to talk through briefly, the application process for the DBA itself. So if you haven't already, the first thing you do is you complete an online application form. And then a member of the admissions team will be in touch to discuss you, really, your career goals, the course details, what your research proposal might be. Okay. If that all goes well, we'll ask you to submit required documentation, including things like your CV, ID, personal statement, the research proposal itself, 2 references, and any academic transcripts. Okay. After that point, Geoff and perhaps 1 or 2 others will review your proposal, and you'll be invited to an interview. Okay, which will give you the opportunity to discuss your research proposal in some more depth, and they'll be able to find out a little bit more about you, and you'll be able to find out a little bit more about Aston and what the DBA involves. The final step after that is for you to, 1, get excited, obviously get excited, but secondly, to make your £1,000 deposit, which confirms your place on the program, and then you simply get ready to start. Okay, so I appreciate that's a whistle-stop tour of the process there. If you do have any questions, if you haven't started your application already and you are interested in September, okay, please book a call in with me. There is a slide at the end for you to do so. What I'm going to do now, Geoff, for Geoff is hand over to him. Let me know when you'd like me to move over to different slides. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so as Peter said, the proposal is a real key part of the application, and what we're looking for is for you guys to be able to demonstrate and really to make a good application. Have a look at our website. We've got a lot of information on there. We've got a lot of student testimonials that reveal what the student journey's been for people like Paul. I was an Aston DBA student in the past, so it's really going through what they did, what their research questions sounded like, and what their reflections were on the DBA journey. I've also got some other videos on there on what makes a good proposal. So I'll perhaps go into a little bit more detail on some of those aspects of the website. So please check it out and make sure that you've done that, because it will enhance. We're very keen in the application process that there's enough due diligence going on that we can both evidence, both you and the applicant, we can both evidence that we've done our due diligence. So we're right for you, and you're right for us. We've both got to do our homework to make sure we're on track here. Thanks, Pete. So yeah, you really need to have a look at, and all of this is available, and when you get a copy of this presentation, you can link through to all of these areas. So as most universities are, we're organized by primarily departments. So Paul and I are both allocated. I'm in the marketing and strategy department, for example. We're all allocated to different departments. It's how we organize our operational research activities and also our teaching activities. But also, every academic has the opportunity to also join a research center. So we have an entrepreneurial research center, for example. We have a crisis management research center. So you'll find these as clusters of research topics that are pertinent really to the socioeconomic environment that we live in right now. So this is where we get clusters of academics working together, all on a similar topic. And these are clustered around research centers. The reason I'm mentioning it here is because all of these resources are available for you via our website. So you can see the type of research activities that we are undertaking as a group of academics, either through research centers, through our departmental resources, or through our academic research profile. So each of us has got an academic research profile. So you can even see what individual academics are working on. Because in many ways, doctoral research is a matching process. We want to make sure that the topic that you want to study, we're active in. We're actively carrying out that kind of research ourselves. Now, the advantage you've got coming to Aston is that we are a big business school in proportion to the size of our university. Aston Business School is the largest school within Aston University. We're a triple accredited business school. We do most business topics. Okay, there's not a lot that we don't do. So we're pretty confident you're going to find the topic of interest in there somewhere. But you need to be sure, and you need to evidence to us that you've identified where your research can sit. Okay, that's important because it means that when we allocate supervisory teams to your research topic, that we're both hitting the ground running from day one. In many ways, the principle of doctoral work is that you are building on prior researchers, you're building on other academics' work, and that really starts with where can you contribute to our research centres and how best we will be then to supervise your work. So these resources, have a look at them, make them part of your research proposal. Next one, Pete. Yeah, so it's all about one of the things that as you start to, if you're successful and you want to join the program, one of the principles of doctoral study is this idea of making a contribution. You can also look at things like Google Scholar, another free resource, where you can actually not just look at Aston academics, but also other academics globally that again are doing work in your area. One of the things I was a little bit confused about when I started to when I became an academic and started to do my own research was I felt that in order to be able to make a contribution, I had to really invent something from zero, get a cure for HIV almost. It isn't like that. The principle of academic endeavor is that you're building on the work of others. So when you start to look at some of these academic papers, the way they read will be, this is what we set out to do. This was our research question. We operationalized it in the field and gathered more data. And this is what we discovered. This is what we didn't do in this research project. This is what we've left for new researchers to do in the future and make their contribution. So you're building on the work of others. And that's really the principle of academic endeavor. You're not having to start from scratch. You're building on prior knowledge to provide some new contribution, new information that's not been studied before. And also, of course, there's a contribution to practice. DBA students are practitioners. It's a doctoral degree for practitioners. So it's important that you've recognized, you've probably witnessed some phenomena in the workplace over 20 years or however long you've been operating in the workplace. You've witnessed this phenomena. So you must see how filling that gap of perhaps solving that problem can change practice, can change not just your practice, but maybe even your industry, and in some cases, maybe even government policy. Okay, it's important you tell us that story, not just from an academic perspective, but also, we need to look at a DBA as an investment. It's an investment in our capabilities and our abilities, and of course, like any investment, you want to see a return on that investment. So what's it going to mean for you in terms of being able to contribute to practice? What are the implications for for your career and your professional activity going forward? So tell us that story in your proposal. That's important. Okay. Thanks, Pete. So crafting a good proposal. It's around shaping it around our research centers and our academic expertise. As I said, we do most business topics, but show in your proposal how you've identified that link between what you want to do and where our expertise lies. Okay, that's important. Um, Secondly, illustrate that understanding of an academic contribution. We don't expect you to be, professional researchers when you come into the organization. That's the reason you want to study a DBA, to go through our research methods program and to learn the skills of academic research. But what we're looking for is for you to be able to at least identify other academic papers that have identified and highlighting where new knowledge is required. We have the advantage. Many of our new students that are just starting this spring, there's lots of really hot topics: AI, entrepreneurship, the implications for government policy on accounting, and crisis management. These kind of topics that are really relevant right now. So it's important for you to be able to identify where your topic's going to make a contribution, what difference you could make in your own field of interest. It should give an overview of our research agenda. So give us a bigger picture of you know, the organization, the country, the industry element of your research. So where does your topic sit within your overall, you know, context in terms of, it could be the company you work for, it could be the industry that you're operating in, or it could be the you know, government policy within, it could be a map from a macroeconomic perspective. So give us that bigger picture of what the research agenda is from your perspective. An understanding of the key research question. That's quite a useful discipline to get into. How can you articulate, you know, what's the key story, the key question that your intended, you know, research project, your DBA is going to be able to answer? Typically, in a proposal, we often see proposals where really there are potentially 2, 3, 4 doctorates within a proposal, and we only need one. So the more you can drill that research question down to really, you know, that's relevant to you as a practitioner, but also from us as a group of academics, the better that's going to be. So really, my recommendation in a proposal is try and drill down as much as you can, to that key research question. And as I've said, give us a flavor for the state of knowledge around your research. What do other researchers use in terms of evidencing key literature, key key academic papers that have been published on the topic, and the types of theories that have been used to elucidate some answers in those kind of areas. So give us, what is the state of knowledge? What's left to be known in your particular area? Research methods is quite useful. Many of us are, you know, predisposed to look at things from a numbers perspective. So, you know, we want to look at big data sets, and we want to solve problems and add to knowledge mathematically through quantitative methods. And others are more predisposed to look at, you know, words and meaning behind what people say, and perhaps artifacts of what the evidence is around us about particular phenomena through qualitative methods. Now, neither of these are right or wrong. And sometimes you can combine a mixture of the two in a mixed methods approach. But again, in a proposal, it's quite useful for us to hear from you in terms of what's your predisposition. How do you want to go about, you know, solving this problem, putting a sample together, pulling a data set together, and how are we going to analyze that? What tools are we going to use to analyze that? So tell us your, you know, your predisposition towards methods. And yes, finally, you know, what's the anticipated contribution to your current field of practice, to the understanding of your phenomena? I guess it's about, I mean, to a certain extent, it's about how you're going to leverage this DBA. One of the questions we often ask in an interview is, so what are you going to do with it? You know, 4 years on, or however long it takes, what are you going to do with this new knowledge, both from a career perspective, you know, professional perspective? You know, what are you going to, how are you going to use it? That's quite important because, you know, as I'm sure we're going to talk to Paul in a second, you know, when you're doing the groundwork, you know, you're doing the hard yards, you know, getting this job done, you know, in those dark moments when you're, you know, you're trying to pull together that last bit of analysis or interview those last 10 people or whatever it is, to have in your mind, this is why I'm doing this, is, you know, is quite a motivating thing. And we're keen to hear from you, you know, in an interview, as part of the proposal. Okay, Pete. Okay, so look, Paul is one of my is one of my colleagues at Aston. So I'm gonna perhaps, Paul, if you just wanted to give us a brief introduction, maybe of what were you doing before you started the proposal. I mean, perhaps give us a little bit of background on your professional career before, you know, before you got stuck into the DBA.
Yeah, so I'd spent quite a lot of time around different roles. So I'd had a background in recruitment consultancy. I'd worked in human resource management. I'd owned my own consultancy for a little while. I'd studied various things across that time. So my first degree was in behavioral science. Then I went on to do a number of postgraduate courses, such as human resource management, occupational psychology, and also counselling skills. So I've always been entwined with education some way for a long time, but had a wide variety of different experiences. But then about 15 years ago, I started my first role in higher education. And I was back in Cardiff University in Wales. And I was running employability schemes, internship schemes. Then moved up to Aston 11 years ago. And I'd done a range of roles while at Aston University, including research systems manager. I was a business development person right when I first joined for careers and placements. Then more recently, I headed up the research office for the college. And it was at that point that I went on to think about doing the DBA.
Okay, so I guess would we call those things, I guess, professional services? Is that how you would describe them, I guess, in higher
Yeah, so it's all
education?
those background functions, I guess. So you've got that distinction in university between an academic role, which is very much about the teaching, how we are being able to meet student needs and teach them things, but also the research side, versus then that professional services role, which is all the other functions that make a university work, but isn't necessarily about the teaching side or the research side then. So that side was me for a long period of time. There was that background side.
Okay. So why DBA, Paul? At that stage of your career, when were you? How long ago was it you qualified?
There would have been 5 years. So my DBA, much like you were intimating earlier, took me 4 3/4 years to complete. So when I first started, it was just as lockdown hit when COVID hit. And the reason I started it was because I was heading up the research office for the college and work with academics. I could see there was different pain points and different things going on. And I wanted to try and do something about that, not just for my role, but thinking about, well, what's the more strategic view to take of this? How can I fix some of these bigger problems? And I had a very supported academic member of staff who was my manager, Nicholas O'Regan, who was a professor, and he was the Associate Dean Research at the time. And he was really encouraging them to say, why don't you think about doing this? Because you work in academia, this would look really good. But also it applies to outside organizations then to sort of elevate your career even further. So he was the inspiration, along with me recognizing, and I've always been good at this, recognizing the problems around me and wanting to stick my nose in maybe sometimes where it should belong, but also sometimes where it shouldn't belong, and wanting to solve problems that I come across. And that was the real inspiration then. So for anybody listening, if you've got that curiosity and you can spot problems and want to solve things, the DBA is a great way to try and do that. Then it gives you real structure to explore these problems in depth, but also find a way to be able to do something about it. And that's why I like the DBA then rather than a PhD, was his ability to think about not only the research, what's the research going to do after, what's the impact I can have. And that's why the DBA was really appealing.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's more than intellectual curiosity. It's very practical, kind of solution orientated curiosity, isn't it, Paul? I think
Yeah.
that I mean, I'd agree. I felt that as well, and I think a lot of our DBA students want to know why things happen. They've observed phenomena, and they want to know why things happen. So, what was your research topic? I mean, give us an idea what your research question was.
So I'm going to give you the title of what it ended up being, and then I'm going to explain
Okay.
what that means, because it's a very highfalutin title.
Okay.
The
Okay.
title was Fragmented Identities and Professional Growth, a Postmodern Exploration of Academic Development. So
Okay.
it sounds beautiful, and it's been a long time trying to craft the title for that. But what it boils down to essentially is thinking about how academics grow and develop in their roles, how we can try and enable that to be more effective in terms of what we can do to help academic staff really succeed in the roles they do in, but also being mindful about the factors that exist that can influence and both support that growth, but also damage it. And that's the idea about postmodernism, for instance. I brought together a number of different elements of my background. So my first degree in behavioral science included psychology, sociology, and anthropology. So this was a real coming together and where I found my little niche. You talked earlier about the ability for us to all build on the work of others. So the way I imagine that is rather than trying to build your own wall, you're building a brick in that wall essentially, but you get flexibility of that brick then. So you decide for your methods, for your research, where you want to place that brick, what that brick looks like, the materials you're using, the final finish of it. So the wall isn't just all symmetrical and nice and neat, but you're placing your bit in there. What I was trying to do was combine to find my little niche was combine elements of sociology through postmodernism and taking that side of our college, but also then taking some psychology bits in terms of my method, because I was using something called reflexive thematic analysis. I was bringing two of those things together to investigate a problem with academia through the business school, but also crossing across different disciplinary ideas, I guess, and bringing those together then. So that bit about what you mentioned about building on the work of others, what I like about that is being able to see, well, what are those people doing over in that area? And what are these people doing in this area? And if they haven't been combined before, what do we get? So I want to look at professional development with this postmodern lens, and then thinking about using a different technique for analyzing things from the psychology side. So really was trying to almost like a pick and mix of things that really interested me, but thought this would be a new way of analyzing this problem and looking at this then.
So it sounds like was it around kind of productivity, getting organizations, in this case a university, to work more effectively?
So more about the personal growth and development of individuals then.
Right, okay,
So how we can
okay.
support people. So for instance, I'm a member of the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personal Development. But if you're an academic member of staff, you'll have different priorities and pressures. So there might be drivers to improve your teaching, and there'll be accrediting bodies for that. There might be the research side of things. There might be this engagement side of how we speak out to the public. And what I recognized when I was heading up the research office was that academics are pulled in so many different directions, with all different professionals' bodies looking after each, or some not at all. How do we reconcile that as individuals? How do we support people to be able to balance all those demands, where there's so many different pressures and different trigger points for activity? How do we support people in the right way to allow them to think for themselves, to be empowered, but also provide an environment that allows these people to really flourish and grow?
Okay, thanks, Paul. So how did you find the research process? How did you find the kind of the supervisory process? How did you find gathering the data, the analysis, the time frame? How did you go on? Just comment on how you found that getting the job done.
So I'm going to start with 5 words that I wrote down to think about this. And they're both good words and scary words as well. And I'll explain why they're both good and scary. So the 5 words I had were enjoyable, frustrating, rewarding, testing, and uplifting. So a real mix there. Some things which could be considered a bit more negative and some things a bit more positive. Because for anybody embarking on a doctoral journey, and you probably found this as well, Geoff, there's ups and downs to that journey. Nothing is plain sailing. You are problem solving, your ideas change, you come up against headaches all the time. And one of the biggest things there is probably about time management, because I had a full-time job, was very busy, it was COVID, lots of things were going on. And then my jobs changed over time. So how do I fit in concrete time to work on these things? So that was the frustrating part, is just making sure I can manage my time and trying to cope with life circumstances. Some of my colleagues in the DBA had families to look after, people that demanded time and attention as well. So these things can be difficult then to balance when you get excited about it, and it is enjoyable to do a doctorate. But then there's frustrations because of having other things to balance. But it's massively rewarding to be able to really be enthused about a topic you're looking at, and to try and think about these things critically, to try and work out, how can I make this better for the future? How can I leave a stamp on the world and grow that stamp and actually make a difference? It is testing. I think any doctorate, whether you're doing a DBA, a PhD, an education doctorate, whatever different formats they are, it's a testing experience. So 2 of the words that spring to mind, and I've discussed this with other academics, would be perseverance and resilience. This isn't about having to have some massive brain power for these things, but perseverance and resilience really go a long way to make sure you're always, much like a marathon, always taking that next step and just focus on the end goal, working towards that then. But the uplifting part is I finished with a 65,000 word document. And I was very proud of it. You get to defend your thesis and talk to people about this. And it gave me a personal sense of joy then to think, A, it's complete. I've done this massive project, which for me will always be with me now. I get to use those 2 little letters before my name so I can impress people at dinner parties or whatever and make people look at me differently. But also thinking about, and for me, this is the massive thing, thinking about how do I use that then? And that's been really important to me, is what does this research then lead to? And when I look at any research being done, I'm always thinking, what difference does that make to people? And there's a need to do research just for being able to explore stuff. But the bit that excites me is about how do we do research? How do others do research that really makes a difference then?
And
that's
how
what
are
we
you
do.
going to just give us a flavour, Paul, as to given what you've discovered. I mean, just in terms of what are you doing now? What was the impact of this new, the DBA? What has it meant for you professionally?
I guess things that come together quite nicely, and you might say that it would look like it had all been planned. I'm not sure it was all planned as meticulously as it might have worked out, but I shifted from doing my professional services role into an academic role about 2.5 years ago. So I was deliberately trying to work towards that, and the DBA allowed me to do that, to be able to show I was really committed towards wanting to work on myself, to develop myself in terms of my knowledge, skills, and abilities. This is a way to demonstrate that to Aston. I was really keen to do that, and it helped me then secure a role on the academic side about 2.5 years ago. So then I had to put time into finishing off the doctorate. But then probably about 4 or 5 months ago, then I applied for a role internally, which was as Associate Dean for Postgraduate Education in the business school then. So my current role is about looking after the remit of all postgraduate students right across the business school. So business school is a top rated one. It's got a really good place in terms of how we're recognised both in the UK and nationally. So for me to be able to take on that postgraduate portfolio, that was really important to me because it allows me the opportunity now to think about the way we develop staff. And while my role isn't directly taking control of all of that, I can certainly have now more of an influence using my thinking from the doctorate, but also enhancing and increasing that, because the doctorate isn't an end point. It's part of a journey. And I think what it does do, anybody that takes on the doctorate, it gives you this real passion to keep on learning throughout your life then. So this is where I see it's been a massive benefit. It's given me the chance to do this role, to embrace my role in higher education. But I could also see from my background in other organizations, whether it's third sector, whether it was working in industry, whether it was working in public sector, I can see why this type of education experience would drive you on to greater success across any industry or any sector then. So for me, it's been great, and it's been able to allow me to think about how I use these things. But more importantly, it's left me with a taste of thinking, right, but what else can I do now? It doesn't have to be a 65,000 word thesis, but how do I use research to then impact people in the workplace? And to craft development opportunities now, so much more about co-creation, understanding individuals, and the tension you referred to earlier, or the method you referred to earlier, that difference between quantitative and qualitative, for instance. This has allowed me to experience those things more so. So I'd had a very quantitative focused background, but actually I chose to do a qualitative methodology for my doctorate. Because I felt it was the best approach to really learn about people's journeys and fit in with what I wanted to do, but also increase my skill set then as well. So this can be a massive point for people to think about the challenge they can set themselves then, not just to get the doctorate complete, but what else can they learn, how they can develop, and how does it give them a more rounded skill set for the future then.
Brilliant, Paul. I mean, I'd certainly, just picking up on a couple of things that you said there. Resilience for sure, perseverance. I can absolutely relate to those things. Time management. I mean, I think being utterly ruthless about your own personal productivity, with the pressures of, you said, of your job, obviously everyone's got a personal life, that juggling act, you've got to be really ruthless about how you being organized, haven't you? Just about getting yourself organized in order to be able to get this job done. And yeah, time management I think is key, because as Paul said, with COVID, that had an impact on every organization, and therefore having the good thing about our DBA is it is flexible. It's meant to be a part-time professional doctorate, and that means everybody's personal and professional life is different. Some people will finish on 4 years, 5 years. Some people will finish even earlier than that. It is allowed through a waiver of regulations. Most people, like Paul and I, finish between 4 and 5 years. That's a typical duration of the program. Okay, so look, Paul, thank you so much for that. I'm going to open it up to the floor now. to ask Paul or I any questions that you'd like to. You've got two DBA graduates here that are willing to take your questions. So if anybody's got any queries, now is the time. Okay, I can see one here already from Ranjan. So the cumulative dissertation, I think, I mean, there are some doctorates, Ranjan, that offer what we call a 3-paper route, where you can submit 3 individual papers. That isn't something that we currently offer. It's kind of, and the reason for that is because the 3-paper routes that some organizations offer typically would require you to have submitted to journals and have papers in some stage of review, possibly even published. Now, for a DBA student, that introduces an element of uncertainty, because you're the vagaries of individual editors, what they think of your work, and also how long it takes to get articles published. So we much prefer the single thesis route, albeit that how you structure those chapters, those individual chapters within your thesis, is a matter for you and your supervisors. As long as the only test that counts here is that you have to make an argument for a contribution in an academic viva. That's the test. And as long as you can do that, however your thesis is constructed, then you're going to get home and dry. Any other questions?
There's some in the Q&A section as well, Geoff. So there's an anonymous attendee. How much time is required for the first 4 modules? What are the assessments, and are the 4 taken together, or is it one at a time and self-paced?
Yeah. No, look, I think I mean, what I would say in terms of so year 1 is the research methods phase, which is 4 individual pieces of work, they're individual assignments. They are less about, I mean, I guess those of you that have done I'm sure most of you have done a master's degree of some description, they are less about studying modules, and they're more like training. What these 4 modules are doing is that we're giving you the skills and the capabilities to be able to research your topic. So that doesn't mean you've got to be an expert in quantitative methods if you're going to use a large data set. What you need to be able to understand is the statistical tool that you're going to use for your individual data set. That's the key, because you're just trying to get to the answer that you're trying to get at. So in that first year, that's what the program is about. It's about getting those 4 modules completed, and then you move into the research phase of the DBA. In terms of how much time it takes, I mean, it's difficult to say precisely, but certainly I don't know whether Paul would like to comment. For me personally, it certainly was evenings during the week. It was certainly big chunks of weekends, and big chunks of my holidays was spent undertaking this work. It was a commitment for sure.
And I think that self-paced nature, making sure you're doing the work, whatever type of doctorate you do, no one's going to do the work for you. You get support, and if you're being taught modules, you get support around those things online for this one. But it's going to be up to you, really. So there's no right answer we can give you, because that's going to be up to what you put into it then. It's the same for any other type of study as well. It's about being disciplined and working out for yourself what you can afford to do. Obviously meeting timelines for assessments and things, depending on which way it works. But it's going to be up to you to set the pace for what you want to do things then. So I think that's going to be an individual decision about your personal circumstances though.
Yeah, and the more the topic is related to you and your workplace, it's not a hobby. You might be intrigued by some phenomena unrelated to your job or your workplace, and that may well be an interesting DBA thesis. But in terms of, we talked about productivity, it's going to be very difficult for you to look at something completely different from your job and your workplace. the closer it's aligned to what you do for a living, well then, you're leveraging this new knowledge straight away, and suddenly, it makes sense to to apply more time to it.
A big tip as well, Geoff, I don't know whether you found this, is about making the most of the community around you as well. So getting to know the other students, being able to share your journeys with them. I found that massively helpful then, because that was a motivating point for me then, to understand what other people are doing, either to help inspire them or to be inspired by others then. So the people around you, finding ways to connect with other students, that's really important then.
That is important, I think, and we do a lot of work to try and facilitate that. I am conscious, I'm the program director, and I'm conscious that this is we have students from all over the world, okay, and we want them to feel part of the Aston community, and we do a lot of work to try and facilitate that. I didn't answer that one about the 4 modules. So they're not taken together, they're spaced out. They're roughly 3 months per module, and I think all of the lectures are they're delivered live, but appreciate because of time zone differences, they're also pre-recorded. And if you miss a particular, because of time scheduling, you miss a particular live recording, you can always fix some time with the module leader, so a one-to-one with the module leader, and they'll go through with whatever you need to go through. Amy, yes, look, no, as far as internal member of staff is concerned, you need to speak to Peter. He's in the application team at Aston Online. He understands the various funding options that internal members of staff have got. So I'd recommend maybe fix a call with Peter. His email address is on the screen there, and he'll help you out.
There was 2 more questions on the Q&A as well, Geoff. I don't know if you've seen them.
Have I seen those? Let me just grab that. Hold on a
Are
second.
all lectures pre-recorded and available from the start of the program?
They're not available they're not available from the start of the program. We want to pace you. It's designed that way. So we'll release each module in turn, and you complete each module in turn. It is a little bit, I think Paul touched on a little bit. It's about eating the elephant in chunks. Take this thing in stages. So take each of the 4 modules in turn, year 1 done. Focus on the first qualifying report. Next 8 months is done. Then you've got 2 years to do. Then it's about, I remember what I did in the post QR stage was I split those final 2 years into 8 quarters. And I said, right, okay, so quarter 1, I'm going to do this. Quarter 2, I'm going to do that. So you're always trying to split the job into manageable chunks of activity and time, is what I would say. Yeah, that's right. So basically they're roughly 3 months long, and then you set an assignment, then you move on to the next assignment.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Does anybody else have any questions at all for Geoff or for Paul?
Just want to say it's nice to see Amy's name pop up, and I would encourage you, if you can, to do it. I think knowing you a little bit, Amy, it would be a great learning opportunity and a good thing to sink your teeth into.
No other questions, Pete? I think we've exhausted them.
Well, thank you guys once again for taking the time out of your schedules to have a chat amongst each other. It was really interesting and insightful to hear all about. To anybody else, Amy or Miriam, anyone else in this chat today, please feel free to drop us an email there, inquiries@astononline.ac.uk, or scan the QR code. Myself or a member of the team will be in touch to discuss the DBA with you in more detail. So thank you again for joining us. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll speak soon.
Nice to meet you all. Good luck, and thanks again, Paul. Really appreciate it.
No problem. My pleasure. Nice to see you all.
Thanks, Pete. Take care. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye now.
Bye.